Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor. You are all set and ready to begin.
All right, well, great. Thank you very much. And welcome to our first budget workshop. And I'll turn it over to Rick very shortly. We have a lot of people on the line, and for each, we have a lot of departments to get through tonight. So let people introduce themselves as they go along. We do have with us Mayor Cantor's on the phone, and we also have Vice Chair of this committee, Deb Poland. We have Minority Leader Susanna Wade, so to the two other members of the committee, and we also have Councilors Walters, McGinnis, Blanks, and Cortez. I think I caught everybody of the electeds, and I see we have a lot of staff as well today because of all the different committees. So with that, again, thank you all for coming, and I'll turn it over to our town manager to walk us through various budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. Rick Ledwood, Town Manager. Great to see everyone for night 3 in a row of our time together, and night 3 of probably 30 that we'll be spending together over the next 4 to 5, 6 weeks. So we look forward to working with you as we move through our very large budget. And tonight, I just want to quickly just introduce you to everybody around the table here. We have, and I'll just go by for me site. We have Gina Verano, who everybody knows. We have our town clerk, Mr. Davidoff, Peter Privatera, our finance director, Joe Dakers, our director of assessment, Jared Morin, director of technology, Lisa Newton, our financial operations manager, and then we have 2 newcomers who you have not met yet. So we have Mike Vignali, who is our risk manager. Mike came to us from a veteran. He's born and raised in the Northeast, but spent the last few years of his career as a risk manager down in Florida. Very fortunate to have Mike joining West Hartford. We had Susan down at Tully for 30 years, who many of you will probably remember. We didn't think we'd be able to fill her shoes. And certainly we had Lisa Mashad, who came in and filled in and did a wonderful job of managing our risk program. And again, large shoes to fill, but Mike's been here for a couple of months now, and we know we have the right person managing our risk program. So it's a pleasure to have Mike here with us this evening as well. And then we have our Director of Human Resources. So we have Joe Agnello-Vili. Josephine came to us from the city of Meriden, where she was the HR director there for the last couple of years. Prior to that, she's a veteran HR leader within the Connecticut Community College system. So absolute pleasure to have Joe on the team as well, joining us this evening. So we're going to start with, and we have Jerida, of course. How can I not introduce Jerida? None of this happens without Jerida. So appreciate, as always, Jerida's efforts in managing all of our committees and getting this online program ready for everybody tonight as well. So we're going to start with, as on the agenda, we have general government. And I'm going to turn it over to our town clerk, Mr. Davidoff, who will walk us through a summary of the town council and the town clerk budget. And the town council budget can be found on page 4.3 of your budget documents. And turn it over to you, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Mr. Ledwith. Good evening, members of the committee and fellow town councilors. I had big shoes to fill as the new council clerk, and the first budget that we'll be presenting this evening is the town council budget, which starts on page 4.3. As you can see, the town council budget covers 2 employees. It covers the town clerk and 50% of the assistant town clerk salary. This year's proposed budget increases by $30,327. A significant portion of that budget increase is due to membership fees paid to CROG as well as to the Greater Hartford Transit District. Also, a portion of the increase is due to professional services, which is attributed to the town's audited financial statements that are undertaken on a yearly basis. So the fees for the audit are split evenly. I don't know if they're split evenly, but they're split between the Board of Education as well as the Town Council. As you'll note through the budget on page 4.5, it lists the various agencies that dues are paid to: CROG, Greater Hartford Transit District, and CCM. And then there's a little chart that shows you contributions that the council traditionally has made contributions to outside agencies ranging from West Hartford Youth League, Noah Webster Foundation, WHCI, West Hartford Health League, Playhouse and Park, Interval House, West Hartford Community Theater, and West Hartford Symphony. So those are the major portions of the town council budget. On page 4.6, you'll notice that the performance measure that are noted with respect to how many hearings, meetings, and the like. They're reported on a calendar year for the purposes of this budget, not on a fiscal year. But I would like to point out that the council does tend to meet at least, it looks like, almost twice a month for its regular meetings. And there are 65 standing committee meetings. So that is what basically takes up a lot of the council's meeting time. This coming year, there will be a justice of the peace appointments. It happens every 4 years. So our office will be very busy making certain that that process gets done. And then I think a thing that's really important to highlight is the board and commission appointments. That's handled by the assistant town clerk. In this case, it's Tiana Pelletier from my office, who has basically streamlined the process from recruiting applicants to making certain that the names get filtered and placed on the council agenda, working with the mayor and the minority. And you can just see in the last year, 84 individuals were appointed and or reappointed to boards and commissions. We all understand the significance that these volunteers play in our community. Their roles are significant in terms of public service as members of the council. And without them, I don't know how we would accomplish a lot of these tasks. They would probably be a lot more expensive to do that. So the only other thing that I'll point out is that we are busy doing these daily activities on behalf of the council. Our office is required to produce the agendas, the legal notices, the minutes, to make certain that they're either on the newspaper or put into civic clerk, so that we are in compliance with all the Freedom of Information Act requirements with respect to notice as well as minutes for them. At this point, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about the town council portion of the budget.
Thank you, Leon. Does anybody have any questions? I'll start with committee members. I don't see anybody. Anybody else have any questions? I do not see any. I think I've got the full screen. So with that, thank you very much, Davidoff, and turn it back to Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will go next to the town manager budget, which can be found beginning on page 413. And as folks know, we have 6 members of our team. We have myself and Jerida, of course. We have Renee McHugh, our public relations officer, Chris Gorski, who oversees our economic development team, and we have Adrian Billings-Smith, our equity officer. Had a chance to highlight many of our department's highlights and commissions. Took up a couple of pages within the board, within the budget book, and highlighted many of them last night during our presentation. But just an outstanding team to be able to work with day in and day out, and really a big shout out to Jerida for helping to manage our office, which is no easy task, and then certainly the year-round efforts of ensuring that all of our standing committee meetings, council meetings run seamlessly. So thank you, Jerida. So I'll start with, if we go to page 418, I do want to highlight a couple of increases that you can see in the budget, primarily 3 changes. So under office expenses, you can see that we have increased by about $9,000 under office expenses. What we did do here, which drives most of that change, is we have several staff events that Jerida actually helps oversee throughout the year for all of our staff members, and we took the administration of that program and brought it from human resources into the town manager's budget. So that is the reason for that particular increase. We also have an increase in dues and travel. And that has to do, I've yet to find myself having the time to make it to an ICMA conference. We did build in some funds there in the event that I can free up some time this year to get to those very important conferences. And then our economic development team attends a couple of conferences through the Connecticut Economic Development Association. So we built in a cushion there as well for both of those events. And then probably the biggest one would be under professional services. And we have in the past and under prior town managers have utilized the services of Intersect Public Solutions, and they are a professional consulting firm that provides public affairs type of consulting advice and services to the town manager in our office. So we've used them prior to me arriving here, and then we had some events occur during my first year where we re-engaged Intersect back in December of 22. And they have been a critical partner for us in navigating several public affair type issues. So that is that's driving the largest portion of the professional services increase. And then we have also under our equity division, we are exploring the possibility of hiring a firm to assist with some basic teaching some of our frontline service employees who deal with the public day-to-day on a frontline basis, teaching them Spanish to engage with members of our population who English is a second language and Spanish is a primary language. So that is something that we're entertaining for the upcoming year as well, which is driving a little bit of that increase. And then the other increase, we're moving from about $5,000 under information technology up to $22,000. The largest part of that increase is we are proposing to purchase a software called Blue Dot, which would assist our economic development division. I think Joe would have access to this software as well in the assessor's office. And we would manage all of our townwide business information and market data from one database. And that would be very critical to assisting our economic development team with attracting and retaining businesses. So having access to all of that information with one software package would be our goal through that addition. And that summarizes the town manager's increases, and be happy to turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and answer any questions that yourself and the committee members had.
Thank you very much. I will note that Councilor Fay has also joined the meeting. Anybody have any questions? I'll look around for hands. Mark.
Thank you. Hey, thanks, Rick. Rick, do you anticipate Intersect going forward, or is this just you anticipate some PR issues this year, and that'll be a one-time cost, or are they on retainer? And then the other question, the software, is that a one-time cost? You won't see that going forward, and it's a new cost and just part of this year and not next year.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Zdanowicz. So we do have Intersect on retainer, have had them on retainer since December of 22. I envision utilizing their services at least for the next year, but it's something that we'll take a look at on a year-to-year basis. It's been pretty busy with several things that have occurred throughout the last 18 to 24 months that they've been assisting us with, and but it is something that we'll evaluate on an annual basis. But that, yeah, to answer your question, it is a retainer for the upcoming year. And then the Blue Dot is a one-time charge, but I do believe, Peter, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but there is an annual charge to that. I know it's an upfront cost of $12,000, and I don't remember offhand if there was an annual fee associated with that after the upfront. Might be like $1,000 a year or something, but I can get that answer for you, Mrs. Zdanowicz, if we don't know it.
No, that's fine. You answered the question. If there's an ongoing cost, that just seems appropriate. But the retainer, you said we've had the retainer in the past, but it's a huge jump. So what changed in the retainer? Is that, are we, a retainer is usually an X amount of dollars for a quarter, a fee a year. And if we've had them on retainer in the past for the past few years, why the jump then?
So we had them, yeah, great question. And I should have explained this a little bit better. So we had them on retainer for 6 months and then moved that to an annual retainer, which, so we went from like 24,000 to 48,000. So tried them out for 6 months and kept them on for an additional year after that.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Councilor Blanks has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Through you,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, Chair. So a follow-up question to Minority Leader Zdanowicz, Rick, on the software package of Blue Dot, the $1,000 annual fee. Is that considered to manage the software if anything goes wrong at any point in time?
Yeah, it's essentially handling issues that might come up under those types of situations, but also upgrades that'll occur on an annual basis as well. But let me confirm that it actually is $1,000. That's a number that kind of is rattling around in my head, but I will confirm that with our economic development team.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Councilor Poland, do you want to ask about the?
Yes. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I think we might have skipped over some of the items from the town clerk's office. I know we did the town council portion, but there were, I think, a few pages on the town clerk side of things that we might have skipped over. And I just wanted to give Mr. Davidoff the opportunity to talk to us about those.
Leon Davidoff, Town Clerk. Thank you, Councilor Bowen. I'm also responsible for Town Clerk, and as everyone may be aware that I'm in month 11. I had very big shoes to fill, and I'm still trying to fill them because of our former Town Clerk, who was here almost 16 years as LeBrook, retired back in April of last year. So as you'll note through the budget here, the financial impact in the upcoming budget is an increase of about $46,000. I think that the most relevant portion of the driving force behind the increase is it's no surprise to anyone, but we're going to have a very significant presidential election this year. You'll notice in a few weeks we're going to have early voting, which is covered in this current fiscal year. But come April, there could be primaries for state legislative races as well as congressional races. for senatorial races. There will be an early voting component of that, which has significant costs as well. Our office is only responsible for absentee ballots with respect to early voting, but there is a cost to that. And when we get to the presidential election, there's 14 days of early voting. So we anticipate there will probably be a very large turnout because West Hartford's a very engaged community, and people take their privilege and right to vote very seriously. And we expect to have a high turnout. So we do anticipate that people will use a variety of methods to cast their ballot. Another thing that I'd like to point out is during this past year, we engaged with our E-Code service. They are the ones that digitalize all of the ordinances and minutes and everything that you as town councilors act upon and put into E-Code. And they also came out with a new product called MapLink. And after extensive review and with the assistance of Corporation Counsel, we were able to execute a contract with E-Code for their new product called MapLink, which will be quite helpful to people who are seeking to develop properties here in West Hartford, because what it does is the software will interact with all of your ordinances, underlining ordinances with respect to what's a permitted use, what are the restrictions. So it will be multi-layered so that when somebody clicks on a particular parcel, they'll understand all the zoning and applicable nuances to that parcel with respect to being able to redevelop any parcel that's there. That's going to take about a 6-month build out. Our office is absorbing the initial cost for this, and that's why that appears here. With respect to temporary payroll, a lot of the things that are necessary to do, whether it be the licensing of dogs, and I think it's important to realize that we make $1 per dog that's licensed in the state of Connecticut. But right now, as of today, we're well over 4,000 dogs that are licensed. And we're seeing that number increase because of many groomers, daycares, and other people that interact with dogs are requiring them to be licensed and to prove that they have been vaccinated against rabies. So I would probably anticipate that we probably have 6,000 to 7,000 dogs in West Hartford, but we've streamlined that process. We changed how we did it. We made it much more efficient, and it runs quite smoothly. The other portion of the activity that's going to consume a lot of our time is the November 24 election. And we are spending a lot of time with staff training to make certain that everybody understands all the nuances that are necessary to make certain that a proper absentee ballot is issued to anybody who requests it, whether they live in the United States, residing currently in the United States, or they're abroad, whether or not they lived in a place that requires supervised voting. So there's a lot of things to be up to date on. And like I said earlier, when we were talking about the town council portion of the budget, there really is no room for error. So it's very important that we get it right and to have the resources and the personnel necessary to do this. And I currently believe that we have adequate staffing in place to achieve all the things that we do. In addition to doing those two things, dog licensing and the voting, I think it's important to understand that we do all the land recording. So anytime somebody wants to record a lis pendens, a warranty deed, a release, it's all done through our office to put on the land records. And then we are also the Registrar of Vital Statistics. So we will issue out copies of death certificates, birth certificates, as well as issue marriage licenses. So a lot of those three documents, marriage licenses, death certificates, and birth certificates, have a lot of nuances in terms of state statute as to who can obtain them, how they can be obtained, and they have a lot of sensitive information that cannot just be randomly given out. So it does require a certain skill set that members of my staff need to make certain that they understand how to do it. So there's training that's necessary to do that. and any opportunity that we get to engage in training, whether it be virtually or in person, we take all those opportunities very seriously to participate.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Councilor McGinnis.
Actually, Deb has a question since she's a committee member. I'll let her go
I'm sorry,
first.
I did not see her. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you so much, Councilor McGinnis. And through you, Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for this report. And honestly, I'm looking at the table on page 411, and it really tells such a story about our town over the past 5 years. And when you look at births and deaths and land records, marriage certificates, it's actually a really compelling story. But I have a question. And maybe this is the same question that Councilor McGinnis has. Intergovernmental revenue, do we just not put that in there in the budget proposal because we don't know what it's going to be?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Councilor Poland, our department, the only intergovernmental revenue that we have here is a preservation grant that we get from the state library on an annual basis after we file the necessary documentation. That's the only thing that's put in there. We do receive revenue based on land records. There's a portion of that recording fee that comes to us, but we collect that. And so we already have that fee in our possession. And then on a monthly basis, we file to the state of Connecticut. We send them our report of the transactions, and the finance department then remits payment on behalf of the town based on that formula that's already exists.
I think the question was why, sort of as a budget item, and that seems to be a pattern from prior years too. We don't adopt anything in for that amount though. We didn't do it last year either, it looks like.
Yes, that was my question.
Yeah, we just don't pick a number.
I'll defer to Mr. Privatera. He can better explain it.
Yeah, Pete Privatera, Finance Director. Since there's an application going in for this grant, we don't record it until it's actually approved and received. That's why. It's similar to other grants that we get in the police department for distracted driving. We're pretty sure we're going to get them, but we don't record them until we actually receive notification of award.
Thank you.
And I would just like to note that since I've been town clerk, we have put in 2 grant applications and both of them have been approved. So we are constantly looking for any other revenue sources to offset costs for our office.
Thank you. Ms. McGinnis, Councilor?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the cost of dog license is $8 per license, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Councilor McGinnis, that would be for a dog that is either spayed or neutered.
Okay.
That would be the cost, $8.
Okay, and so
of that $8, we keep $1.
Okay, so we keep $1 of the $8. Do you have an idea of what you're actually spending per license, like an average?
We are spending in excess of $1.
So we're going in the hole to process
right.
these.
So I don't think, I think I should sort of back up that response with a little bit more history here. There was a proposal in the legislature for the state of Connecticut Department of Agriculture to take over licensing, because it's my understanding that someone purchased a software program that was going to be capable of handling all the licensing of all the dogs in the state of Connecticut, probably in excess of $250,000. However, when they realized that this would probably not be a very practical way of licensing dogs in the state of Connecticut, that proposal has sort of faded into the sunset. Because what it requires is every person who presents to apply to get their dog license on an annual basis needs to present proof of of their dog being vaccinated for rabies, and they need to also demonstrate what the whether or not their dog is spayed, neutered, or unaltered. Once they do all this and we input all this data, it's then imperative that a tag be issued to the dog owner. So there'll be 169. The tag shape and color would look the same for all 169 towns, but ours would say West Hartford. So how many people at the state level are going to be working in some bureaucratic department at the Department of Agriculture, making certain that the McGinnis family receives the right town's tag for their dog? So I think they studied it, they thought it was a good idea. In practicality, it really is. And then the other portion of that is many people have a paper version of their rabies certificate, and they don't have access of a way to upload that into any type of system to do that. Most people don't have a printer that has ink. They don't have the technology necessary to do that. And to be totally honest with you, a lot of people like to come to town hall and to complete that transaction. It makes them feel like they're doing something very important, and they are doing something important, like keeping their dog licensed so we don't see them on local social media pages with a lost dog and wondering who the owner is. So for a variety of reasons, I think it is a loser. The solution, and if your dog is not altered, the cost is $19. We still keep $1. If you license your dog late, there is a penalty. It increases by $1. So no, the program does not cover the cost in terms of the hours worked nor the materials, because we also have to purchase the tag, and then in some cases we have to mail that to you. Most of our residents are very kind. They provide a self-addressed stamped envelope for us to mail it back to them. So it works out pretty well there. So they understand that, yeah, it's going to cost us about 65 cents to mail you back request. So we appreciate all the residents of West Hartford who do send us that self-addressed stamp.
And just Zanowitz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I didn't want to belabor this, but is it state statute that we can't charge more and we can only make $1? Because it seems if we're in the hole that we should at least break even, or at least make a nickel or dime off this. And we could certainly maybe make $1, but I just don't know why we would be in the hole on something that unless it's by state statute. So I'm wondering if you can help me understand that.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Minority Leader Zanowitz. All the fees for dog licenses are set by state statute. All the fees for land recording are set by state statute. I think you would be relevant to also point out at this point that there's a bill in the legislature right now to increase the filing fees for land records from $60 per filing for just the first page to $65. The Town Clerks Association of Connecticut has submitted written testimony that of the increase of the $5 that we'd be given an additional $1. It's still unseen as to whether or not we will get that additional $1, but currently we get $10 to $12 per recording on the land records. So it's not where it should be in terms of reflective of the cost of doing business, but I guess we're at the point where we need to do these things. And I believe that we do it in a very efficient manner for our residents, and we are cognizant that there are costs, and we do our best to control the costs necessary for the processing of either the licensing or the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'll turn it back to Rick for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up, we have our Deputy Corporation Counsel, Gina Verano, who will provide a overview of her budget. Thank you.
Good evening. The Corporation Council's budget, as you can see, starts on page 4-21. We have a fair amount of highlights and accomplishments that we're very proud of. The first one, I'm just going to, what I think are of particular note, is that we did serve as the counsel for very significant development and construction matters. We also work collaboratively with all of the town departments. We have spent considerable time updating the policies, the manuals, the forms, applications, waivers, and releases, all related to advancements and changes in the law. We also work very closely with outside counsel in litigation and administrative matters. So these are all litigation. This is both claims against the town for personal injury and the like, but also tax lien foreclosures, tax assessment appeals, administrative proceedings before the Freedom of Information Commission. We also spend a fair amount of time conducting training sessions. That's both for individual town departments on a number of matters. And we've also provided training on the Freedom of Information Act for all of the boards and commissions, which I will say was pretty well attended. We did that on 2 evenings. If you move on to the numbers, 4-23, you'll see that we actually have 3 positions. We are small but mighty. Everything that goes through the town basically comes through the Corporation Counsel's office. We touch and provide legal advice to every single department in the town across a number of various issues. I am the Deputy Corporation Counsel. I have the assistant, Cynthia Latour, who, as you know, is a rock star. I also have our legal assistant, Andrea Galino. You'll note that the Corporation Counsel's position is not a full-time employment position. It's represented in my budget under contractual services. When you look at the overall number, you'll see an increase of 6.1%. There's only 2 drivers in the 6.1%. That's just merit increases for town staff and also a $5,000 increase in outside counsel. It's called professional services. There are occasions in which I need to consult with outside counsel. I would say they break down into 2 categories. One is discrete areas of the law. So I may reach out for environmental law, HIPAA issues, affordable financing, and construction law. And then the other area in which I may seek assistance from outside counsel is emerging issues. So human resource issues, land use, and zoning issues that may have changed as a result of recent Supreme Court decisions or perhaps recent legislation. That represents $5,000. I know the number is big. It's a 20% increase, but the dollar amount itself is actually only $5,000. The overall increase in the budget is $31,306. I'm happy to answer any questions on any specifics at this time.
Thank you. I have one. Just in terms of the outside counsel, is this all the, because we frequently see attorneys you've brought in for various cases, do those all get shown here, or they ended up in other spots in the budget, like for HR and everything else? So
these are the outside counsel budget is that I specifically retain for a discrete purpose, but there are lots of other attorneys that we use for outside counsel. Most of that is run through the risk fund. So when we are defending litigation cases, personal injury, excessive force, age, gender discrimination, I will manage outside counsel, and those bills are paid through the risk management fund. I also manage outside counsel with respect to the tax lien foreclosure actions and also defending tax assessment appeals. And that outside counsel is billed through a different account through the tax assessor and tax collector.
okay, thank you very much for that. Help us find all those pieces. Anybody else have any questions? Get the committee first, and then looking at anyone else. I do not see any hands. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do. Rick, so who do we have next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up, we have the Registrar of Voters, which you can find on page 4-25, and Peter and I will take you through some of the highlights of this budget. As we know, Beth Kyle and Elizabeth Russo do a great job of ensuring the voting rights of our citizens and administering all elections for our residents here in West Hartford. Some of their highlights and accomplishments over the last year: executed a successful November general election with a 31.4% turnout. Processed and counted absentee ballots for 1,001 votes, which Mr. Davidoff highlighted as well. I think the big one was, we've all been a part of this process over the last few weeks as well, is preparing us for the early voting legislation that's being rolled out starting this April. We were just informed last week that our early voting plan was approved by the Secretary of State. So very much appreciate the hard work of Beth and Elizabeth putting us in a position to be prepared and run a very successful primary here in April, and then followed by the big election in November as well. So if you turn to page 4-26, you will see that the primary driver of the registrar budget is wages. For the poll workers, we had a minimum wage increase this year, but the biggest driver of that 23.6% increase, and we talked about this at a recent Finance and Administration Committee meeting, is due to the early voting process. So in April, we will have 4 dates that we will provide early voting for. And then in November, if I'm not mistaken, is it 14 days or 10 or 14 days? It's the number's escaping me right now, but a much longer process when we head to the general election in November, and that's driving primarily the entire increase within the registrar's budget. So we'll pause there and through you, Mr. Chairman, turn it over to the committee for any questions that you had.
Thank you. Scanning, I do not see any hands. Nobody's waving. All right. Very good. Well, thank you. Again, we just went through the.
Wait.
I see.
Sorry.
Jumped in late.
And Councilor Blanks also has a question. I just needed a moment to take it all in. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right, verify that I'm reading this right. So we have an increase in temporary payroll of a little over $50,000 due to early voting. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Thank you. And the state gives us how much for early voting?
10,000. Well, yeah, that
10,000-ish?
10,000. Yes. Yeah. And that was a one-time grant, if you want to call it that. So it's not an annual number that we will be receiving.
Okay.
So a majority of it will fall over to our budget and our residents.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you. This is disappointing, but good for us to understand how it works. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Councilor Blanks.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor and Chair. Just a quick question for me in terms of clarification. The poll workers, I believe we said, or I heard, about 14, and those 14 poll workers would be considered to work straight through from what time to what time? Just trying to get a good understanding of how the pay is distributed.
Yep. So it's and Peter may have more of the details on the number of poll workers. But in terms, so our polls will be open from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And we will need coverage from about 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So we will, spread those poll workers out among that coverage. Not saying that everyone will be working, 9-10 hours, but they'll be splitting up that, ensuring that we have coverage. It's at one site for early voting. But then when we get to the general election, obviously we have the 9 polling places that we have coverage for, which is also built into our budget.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. All set.
Welcome.
Chair.
Thank you. I'll try to do a better job of scanning. I do not see any hands. So going once, I do not hear anybody. All right, let's move on to the next department.
Next up, Mr. Chairman, we have Mr. Dakers from our Assessor's Office. Joseph.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Good afternoon, Deputy Winograd, Deputy Mayor, and Finance and Administration Council committee members. We have the biggest increase for the Assessor's Office, which is now fully staffed at 7 members. In our salary category of about $38,000. Overall, the budget increase for the Assessor's Office is 4.8%. We don't have a lot of capital items outside of a revaluation year. So a lot of our increases you're seeing are CPI increases for our software vendors. But I would like to expand on a couple of things for the committee. It won't take a lot of time. A lot of times these things are abstract to the committee. As a result of our professional affiliations and the at least 3 new staff members, our training budget has increased to allow these staff members to attend classes in pursuit of their Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers designation. Not only that, we also have to take continually every 5 years appraisal classes to maintain our state certification. And these classes are through the Appraisal Institute, the Society of Professional Appraisers, and so forth. So with the 3 members, we really have a lot of pressure in this category to get this staff segment certified within the next 4 years. It's a 4-year process. Dovetailing with that is our mileage budget. Most of these staff members go to Yukon every year for a full week. When we can allow them to take a town car, we'll let them take a town car, but most opt to take their own personal vehicles because of where they live at. They can go straight home from the Yukon campus. What we have regulated, however, is that we only reimburse them from the town hall to the campus and back from the campus to the town hall because some of the folks live farther than that actual distance. That has not created a problem for us. The other area I like to expound on just a little bit is our subscriptions account. So many of you are familiar with the MLS. That's one account that we use for a lot of our discovery efforts and to glean information on the real estate market here in West Hartford. And sometimes in other communities when we're looking for comparable data. We also use a company called CoStar, which provides us with a lot of information on commercial real estate. We oftentimes are confronted with that type of data from plaintiffs in tax appeals. So we want to make sure that we're on a level playing field with these folks. We have another commercial platform that we glean commercial real estate from called ConComp. And lastly, it's the NADA pricing guide, which many of you are familiar with. And right now that is going through some wholesale changes. The governor has a bill on his desk. He hasn't signed it in 2 years. I'm not sure what is holding him up, but this will absolutely transform how motor vehicles are priced in the state of Connecticut. And it also will cause our costs to mushroom for that category. Currently, we're spending about $550, which is a tack-on cost. I think it's costing us somewhere in the area of $4,700, our base cost, and about 10.2 cent per vehicle. Of course, we have approximately 46,000 vehicles in West Hartford. They were acquired a few years ago by J.D. Power. And of course, you know, this is a stockholder company, and they really don't have any interest in not helping their stockholders. And so I think the governor eventually is going to sign this bill, and we're going to see a big shift in how vehicles are processed in the state of Connecticut. We also have a couple of other pricing guides, one for our trucks and one for buses, school buses. That is a lot of the major stuff. The biggest ticket for me is that we now have 7 new members, staff members, which is a full complement for the assessor's office. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. One other thing I want to bring to your attention, and this is one of our goals in this office. We have been exploring a product identified as C3 AI. It is a commercial application that values commercial real estate through artificial intelligence. Now, this platform will capture all of the requisite information that we're doing manually and perform some of the other functions that we do in terms of statistical information that we have to produce for the state of Connecticut. So we are now in the exploratory stage. We find it used in California, particularly San Diego. And I think we're going to see more of that, as many of you are aware, in the ensuing years with artificial intelligence. I welcome any questions that you might have on the information.
Thank you very much. Just the number of staff you have, you're at 8 staff now. I think you said 7, but
Yes, eight staff members. I'm sorry.
okay, that's right. All right. Good. Any questions? We have a lot at some point about the IA, but the artificial intelligence stuff, AI, but not right now. We'll talk about that later. That'll be interesting. Any questions on the budget? No. Do not see any. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate
You're
your work.
welcome. Thank you very much.
So we will, at this point, Mr. Chairman, move out of general government and into individual departments. And we will start with our Director of Information Technology, Mr. Moran. Jared.
Thank you, Rick, and Deputy Mayor and the committee. I also do not want to talk about artificial intelligence. I believe my budget is on page 5-1. It's pretty much the same. Nothing's really changed. It's a roll forward budget overall. The only notable change is a slight increase in internet services for our new public parks wireless initiative. But that has been largely offset by switching to a government contract, which is saving us over $10,000 a year. So other than that, the budget is pretty much the same as last year, and I am happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
You're not wrong. It does look nice and simple, but there's a chance to advance through again. Anybody have any questions? Councilor Blanks. I'm sorry. To go, Mark. Did I see your hand at the end?
No, let Councilor Blanks go. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank
Go ahead.
you. Thank you. Just a quick question, Jared. Could you just repeat the amount for the savings?
Yes, for switching to the government state of Connecticut, rather, internet service, it's $9,600 a year. We were paying AT&T quite a bit, about $2,500 a month, and now we're paying about $1,000 a month with Frontier on the new state contract. So when you take that and then measure the public parks internet increase through GoNet speed, it kind of comes out to about a savings of $9,600.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zdanowicz.
Thank you, Jared. I just wanted to say, and I'm not scolding anyone else, but your budget, just to roll forward, congratulations on managing that well. And I'm not saying the other staff hasn't managed theirs well, but I just appreciate that. And just wanted to say good management there.
Thank you.
All right. Looking, I do not See
I
another
will
hand.
say, I'll add on to that. I mean,
Yep.
every time I meet with Jared, it's any opportunity, if it's literally saving $2,500 or $250,000, he attacks every dollar with vigilance. So I appreciate always his efforts to keep our budgets in line. So thank you, Mr. Moran. Next up, we have our Director of Finance, Mr. Privatera.
Good evening, everyone. Everything that we do in finance is either governed by state, local, or federal law. As you know, the finance department is kind of like the engine that keeps the machine moving. We have 4 divisions: financial operations, where we handle accounting, accounts payable, budgeting, grants management, debt issuance, payroll. We're involved with the pension board. We're involved with the investing of town funds. I also serve as a town treasurer. And most recently, we brought in risk management under our umbrella. I'm sorry, I'm on page 6.1, excuse me. The one thing that we strive to do is every year we'll submit our budget and our financial report to the Government Finance Officers Association for their review. And every year we've been successful in getting an award. The only reason why you see the certificate for financial reporting fiscal year 2022 is because the auditors have not completed the audit from last year, and they're still working on that. But that's our, that's what we try to achieve every year, and I think we're doing a great job at it. We have financial operations, we have purchasing, we have revenue collection, and we have financial systems. My department does have a division that basically manages the financial software for the entire town, and the Board of Education, the Munis software. So we basically have, we're involved in virtually everything that doesn't really involve a direct service to the community, but we support every department in the town, and we support the Board of Education and all the grants programs as well. If you turn to page 6-3, you can see that our budget is up by $59,000 or 2.2%. Not as good as Jared, but respectable. The 2 main drivers of that is in our part-time payroll in the financial operations division is $33,684. The reason we have part-time payroll is not too long ago, our payroll supervisor retired, and we needed to keep her on payroll because we needed her to train the new staff, and we're also involved in some new projects such as the HR mark system, which will, when completed, will allow employees to log on to the system. And if they want to calculate what their pension might be, they can go in, and it basically will house all the employee data. So we're assisting them with that. And most recently, with all of the contract settlements, this individual is helping calculate the retro pays to all the employees. That's pretty daunting, considering we have to calculate 3 years of retro pay, and then what's going to cost move forward. And we also work with HR to determine what the pension implications of that are as well. And when these new contracts get signed and executed, this individual is helping the new staff with setting up all the new contract tables and codes. So if there are any deductions that are changing from pension or from medical, we have to set up all new codes. So it's imperative for us that we need this person for a little while longer to help the staff. I mean, one thing we don't want to do, we would never want to do, is have a problem with payroll. That's very important. So we felt it was necessary to keep her on staff for a little while longer. The second big change and it's in financial operations, is $15,000 for a software package called Debt Book. This year, the Government Standards Accounting Board issued a new pronouncement that basically said we needed to recognize and capture the cost of all leases and subscription services, and basically calculate that and include it in our debt projections. That's something that we could not do manually, and we needed to purchase a software system that will do that for us, because that goes into our annual financial report. And the other minor changes that we have are related to merit increases or step increases of employees. There are accounts, some accounts went up, $100 or $200. Some accounts went down $100 or $200, but overall, a 2.2% increase overall, I think is reasonable given the considerable responsibility we have. And obviously, we're involved in a lot of things, collecting taxes and paying people and issuing debt and managing debt and preparing the budget. I mean, I can go on and on, but we can go division by division if you like, or if anyone has any specific questions, I can address them.
Thank you. I'll note the two drivers you mentioned are ones that we weren't in the budget last year, but were spent. You did need them already, so.
That's correct. That's correct.
So it comes off. It looks like an increase, but in fact, that is what we actually did spend. So.
Correct. Correct. And again, it's a situation where when we're dealing with payroll and we're dealing with new staff, we felt it was imperative that we keep the individual on for a little while longer to make sure that we didn't have any issues with payroll moving forward, because some of these individuals weren't familiar with year-end closing or end of the year reporting, and we need to make sure that that we had the capability to continue to do that.
Right. Thank you. So anybody have any questions? Give people a minute to look through.
I'd just like to comment through you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I'm just noticing that we're going to be looking to potentially add the option for taxpayers to pay through PayPal and Venmo, and I think that's a really nice service that we're offering folks. It may even help get money in faster and in a more convenient way for people in town. So thanks for looking into it.
Councilor Zdanowicz.
Thank you, through you. Peter, can you just remind me, I'm sure you've explained this to me, for some reason I'm just not recalling it, on the Moody's, the A, small a, and the A, small a1, the difference that it changed in 23?
Right. What happened is, and it's kind of an incredible story, because when we issued pension obligation bonds, we were pretty sure that our credit rating was going to get downgraded, but we did our homework and we addressed every concern they had, and we maintained our AAA rating. Last year, Moody's decided to change their analytics to determine who basically is a AAA, and it's like they changed the rules in the middle of the game. Some of those analytics that they changed were just not achievable for us at that time. For instance, fund balance ratio. If we compare ourselves with other AAA communities that are the same size that we are and the same economic makeup that we have, they're at 16 to 20%. We were at 9.2%. One of the things that we did was we implemented that new policy where we take 1/3 of our fund balance, 1/3 of our surplus, and we applied to fund balance. In 1 year, we went to 9.2 to 9.9%. And my expectation is at the end of this fiscal year, we'll go at least over 10%. I just wish I could stick around long enough to go back to Moody's and have them review our rating again and bring us back up to AAA. But that's one of the reasons we lost that rating, because they changed their analytics on how they determine AAA communities.
Thanks for refreshing my memory. As you were talking, I remember that now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rick,
Yep, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
and
Mr.
Rick, I
Chairman.
don't know if Peter wants to come back and help out. I don't know that we volunteer. We always like volunteers, so you know.
Yeah, well, I think he would take us up on that for sure.
A hobby. Yeah.
I don't know. I already have a job lined up at Home Depot, so I don't know.
Yeah. So next up, we have our new Director of Human Resources, Josephine Agnello-Vili. Joe started with us just a few weeks ago, and Peter and I gave Joe the opportunity to, hey, well, Joe, we'll take care of this one, and you can just sit back and watch. But she insisted and wanting to take on the HR budget presentation tonight. So she'll go over the HR budget. And then within that same category, we have the risk management and pension budget as well. So Joe will take us through the HR budget, and then Peter and Mike will walk through the risk management budget, and then Peter will take on the pension budget after risk management. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it over to Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. If you go into your booklets on page 7.1, it highlights some of the accomplishments of the HR department, which unfortunately I had no part in. But I just wanted to go over just a few very brief things, just to show the level and the amount of work that comes out of that department. We successfully worked on with department directors on 42 external recruitments, on 11 promotional recruitments. We onboarded 89 new hires, processed through Frontline, which is our new online application platform. We had 606 applications, and we utilized alternate recruitment local sites such as Chamber of Commerce, Constant Contact, and LinkedIn. We also calculated and provided over 200 retirement pension estimates and processed retirements of over 50 Board of Education and town employees. We also enhanced a half-day orientation program for our new full-time and part-time employees, incorporating components such as our organizational values and culture, risk management, freedom of information, emergency management, information technology, payroll, and other aspects of the presentation. This information was put together as a result of feedback that was received by a survey that was conducted. And this is something that employees asked for specifically. If you go over to the next page, on page 7.4, it shows some of the changes in our expenditures. And there's only a few areas that I'd like to highlight. We had an overall department increase of 6%, despite having had quite a bit of work that was produced out of the department. One of the areas that had the most significant impact in terms of increased cost was the contractual services. This was the result of the appropriation of, we needed, this appropriation licenses the town to issue tests and assessments. It also includes agencies that conduct our recruitment screenings, such as background checks and medical examinations required for employees. So in fiscal year 2025, this appropriation is increased due to the promotional exams that are required by outside vendors. The other area where there's been a significant increase of about 21% was in professional services. This was for legal counsel on complex employment and labor issues, union contract negotiations predominantly, and other professional consultants as required. This increase, it was the result of having a number of collective bargaining agreements that expired all around the same date and were negotiated all around the same date. So they were not spread out as perhaps originally intended. We did have some cost savings in the area of advertising because of the use of social media and websites for our advertising. We had a somewhat of a significant, somewhat of a decrease in dues and travel. And we had a slight decrease in office expenses. Other than that, most of the things have remained pretty much the same, except for the blip in the contractual services and professional services. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one just on that. The last point, and this predates you, so you might not have the answer. I just noticed on professional services, the actual expenditure has been pretty solid. We had 82,000 2023, and then last year we actually ended up with 86. And again, your budget shows, is actually pretty strict, regular on that. But it looks like the estimates have been optimistic in terms of the cost. I just wonder if I think you maybe explained a little bit about the contract sort of piling up, but I wonder whether there's any other explanation for that. Do we know why our sort of estimates were low last year?
I think there's times where we're just not we don't always know what we're going into when we go into negotiations. So we could determine that we're going to spend a certain amount of money because we're not going to have certain issues that we're going to be negotiating back and forth, but we don't always account for the issues where we don't always find an accord or it takes longer. And it requires more work on the part of the attorneys and the negotiating back and forth. Unfortunately, collective bargaining is not one of those things that you could take, a crystal ball and say, this is how it's going to happen. Quite honestly, I think this is pretty conservative, given, what I understand about collective bargaining and the work that I've done in the past. But that's my take on it. But I certainly welcome any comments from either our town manager or our CFO.
Yep. Thank you, Joe. And the one thing I would add to that is, as we've talked about with some of the contracts that we've recently settled, these contracts go back to 2001. And we had a lot of stops and starts in that negotiation process, which is why we're going back 3 years now with these contracts. So we'd start the process, get into it, and, for whatever reason, I don't want to blame one party or the other, we would hit kind of a stall in the process, a pause, and we'd go several months before we'd be back at the table negotiating. Might have been leveraging on one side or the other. So it was just a lot of stops and starts in this process, which created kind of an up and down in some of our labor costs. For outside labor council costs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any members. No, for others. All right.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, we will go to the risk management fund, and Peter and Mike, you want to kind of walk us through, starting on page 7.7.
Yep, great.
Sure, I'll start, and then I'll ask Mike for a few comments, and even Rick, I'll even ask you for a few comments regarding the health side of this. Basically, the fund, all of the program expenses are up $2.2 million, or 7.5%. If you look at two increases in particular, health is up $1.3 million, and fully insured is up $734,000 in change. So of the $2.2 million increase to the fund, $2 million increases are attributed to those two categories. Now, I mean, with regard to the health increase, I know that, we're part of the state partnership plan, and we did get some favorable news. And Rick, I'm not sure at some point if you want to comment on that before we go into the rest of it.
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned last night during the presentation, we have almost everybody in the Connecticut State Partnership Plan with 2 exceptions. So we have the fire department, which remains self-insured and a high deductible health plan covered through Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then we have old retirees that are covered under our self-insured plan through a third-party administrator. So all of our, outside of our fire, all of our active employees for the town and the school district are covered through the Connecticut State Partnership Plan. So early on, going back a couple months now, we were informed by the partnership plan to prepare for somewhere in a neighborhood of a 3 to 4% increase in our healthcare costs, which we've honestly, after last year, we were happy with, because we had, if I remember correctly, we had about an 8 or a 9% increase last year. So we budgeted 4%, and then we found out about 2 weeks ago, not even less than that, found out that our actual renewal is going to be 2%. So we are going to amend our healthcare costs while we're moving through the budget deliberation process, and you will see that number decreasing our overall budget number as we work through those particular numbers. Our Anthem Health Blue Cross Blue Shield high deductible health plan is running fairly well as well. That's self-insured under us. I will, if you turn to page 711, I just want to highlight a couple of things on here while we're talking about the healthcare health benefits program. So under active health and active employee claims, you can see that's up 3.8. What did happen under the program expense, you can see that's a 60% increase. We have a number of, we pay our consultants under our program expense. We pay our TPA under our program expense. We do have to adjust this number as well, so it's not a 60% increase. We budgeted our health savings account contribution. So under the, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here with you, but bear with me for one moment. So under the high deductible health plan, we fund half the deductible, and the firefighter or retiree funds the other half of the deductible. So we had built that into the program expense. It should have actually been built into the claims expense. So this is I used to, as folks know, I managed this plan for 20 plus years. And as we were transitioning it from me over into HR, we forgot to undo that number. So that will be, we'll send out a corrected version of this page, but you'll see the program expense number going down, I should say, and the claims number going up a little bit. But again, overall, we'll also see an adjustment to these numbers as we recalculate the 2% renewal versus the higher 4%, which will create a decrease in our total expenses of our health benefits program, which is great news. Peter, I'll turn it back to you.
Hey, Rick, could you just back up, where does that appear? So the 2% versus the 4%, I'm missing where.
So actually, under active employee claims,
yep,
it's 3.8%. That's part of the deductible needs to be put into that number. So that number is actually going to be a little bit higher, but that's technically where you see the 4% increase for the state partnership plan. But it also includes our firefighters' self-insured claims under the high deductible health plan. So it's a combination of those two numbers.
So even though that's an insured product, we still list it as claims as if we were paying it directly.
Yeah, we do. Okay. Yeah. So it's technically self-insured with the state, but we pay them a fixed premium.
Right.
So we aren't you know, if claims are running higher, we don't pay the excess. If they run low, the state makes that money. But
Okay,
it's still technically a self-insured product.
right. And then,
The other, oh, I'm sorry, the other thing I
Yeah.
should highlight on this page, if you go down to stop loss insurance, and you can see we budgeted a 26% increase. So this is, we don't have the renewal yet for stop loss. And so right now, we used to have all of the Board of Ed and all the town employees. We used to have 2,000 active employees covered under the stop loss plan. Now we have 89 active employees covered under the stop loss insurance plan, but about 200 retirees. So we have a much older population, much young, overwhelming the active employee population within the stop loss plan. And that's why that number is, we budget a little bit higher, it usually comes in a little bit lower than we budget. But because it's an older population covered under that, we follow our actuaries' advice and budget a little bit higher. And generally, we do a good job of going out to bid and coming in lower than that. But that's the reason for that 26.4% increase on the stop loss. And I apologize for getting into the weeds on that, but that's the explanation for that increase.
thank you. Before you move on, I want to see if any questions more on that line. Ms. Pullen.
Thank you. So I just want to circle back to that. So do we have an estimate of what that line will look like now that we know the state partnership plan increase is going to be 2% instead of what we had originally projected?
Yeah, I want to say it's bigger for the Board of Education. It's a much larger number for the Board of Education than it is for the town, Councilor Poland. But you know, it might be about $100,000. So it's not. It's great that it's going from 4% to 2%, but we're a much smaller population in comparison to the school district.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I'd like you to turn to page 7-8. And you can see on the bottom of 7-8, the summary of expenses by program. There are 5 programs in the risk fund. We've already talked about health. I had a conversation with Mike today about the cost of buying insurance these days. So Mike, I'm gonna let you talk about some of these categories and what you see happening, especially in the fully insured program.
Now I see why Pete invited me. Yeah, the messenger of the bad news here. I understand. Yeah, unfortunately, in risk management, we are always at the mercy of the insurance market, and it's not a regional problem, it's a worldwide problem. Anybody that's tried to renew their auto insurance or homeowners insurance can probably see the percentage increases. The cost of claims are going up. The amount of disasters worldwide or nationwide for our purposes of reinsurance are drastically increasing. Not to blame inflation, but inflation obviously is a driver when it does come to insurance costs. And obviously, when it comes to our workers' comp, anything medical related, med trends, as we just talked about too, are constantly on the rise when it comes to these types of claims as well. Going down our buckets here, the first one you'll see the percent change for workers' compensation is relatively small. Actually looks like a slight decrease that we were doing for work comp payments. We're trending downwards on overall work comp claims. It's I mean, my predecessor and our team in risk is doing an excellent job with loss prevention and mitigation when it comes to employee training, setting up efforts to reduce costs and claims, and also now taking some steps towards managing claims a little bit more strictly with methods of tracking and really guiding people to the right doctors at the right time, and not just pushing the surgery approach, trying to do a little bit more of a conservative approach towards treatment. So those trends should start to go down a little bit over the years, even though med trends are still going up. That's the way that we're trying to combat it internally. As far as the heart and hypertension, we have a 10.2% increase. It's actually only $20,000. The reason for that $20,000 increase is there is an anticipated heart and hypertension surgery scheduled for this year that we had to take into account for calculation purposes on that. Heart and hypertension over the years, you're going to see just go down and down. There's no new heart and hypertension claims that will potentially come in. It's just as people start to age and, unfortunately, to put this as lightly as possible, die off, that's when the claim costs go down. It's just it's a legacy claim bucket there that's just going to slowly trickle down to nothing. Our self-insured program. So the driving factor in the self-insured program here is primarily the cost of repairing automobiles. You'll see that our largest bucket of increase is really on our self-insured property damage. When people crash up cars now, it's not as easy to just expect a $2,000, $1,000 repair. It's $8,000, $9,000. That was a couple of years ago, a $2,000 repair, and now the cost of actually replacing a vehicle. I mean, the cheapest car that we're looking at right now are $46,000, and compared to something that was $28,000 just a matter of 3-4 years ago. The cost of inflation really hit us in that bucket. Again, my predecessor did an excellent job with staying conservative with her approach here, and primarily the numbers and the increases. In the insurance market, in the insurance world, just to put in perspective, I just came from a renewal down in Florida, and we faced a 58% increase in 1 year. To see only single digits or low double digits it's incredible that the efforts that they're taking. I will say the partnership that they have with FM Global is remarkable for property insurance, because again, property insurance is one of the most expensive insurances right now with the state of the insurance market to secure. And the fact that she only budgeted a minimal 12% increase is rather significant. And actually, that's a conservative number using their actual data, which may be able to be decreased further down the line. And lastly, our insured program. Again, the cost of claims are just, they trend upwards every year, but more so we are facing more and more claims. We know the nature of the world that we live in. We live in a litigation-friendly community, and when claims come in, they are expensive, primarily the lawyers that Gina had mentioned earlier. But the cost of claim defense and the cost of handling these claims is just it's high, and we're accommodating all of these claims. And we right now, to put in perspective, have 6 rather large claims that could hit our self-insured retention pretty significantly, which is why we also calculated for the reinsurance market and our excess carriers the possibility of them looking at those claims and the openness of those claims in the current state that they're in, and either saying we don't want to insure, we don't want to take that risk, or we'll take that risk, but it's going to cost you. And that's what we're facing with this renewal. That's all I've got, Pete.
Thanks, Mike. Just you want to explain on the self-insured program or the fully insured program? I can't remember which one it was, that we have a stop loss amount. We have to pay up to a certain amount, and then the secondary carrier kicks in. How that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a self-insured retention on both, actually. So for our self-insured retention for general liability, auto liability, and the various professional liabilities, we have a $250,000 stop loss. So the town's on the hook for the first $250,000. Again, for these large claims, it only takes 4 or 5 of those, and you're done for our bucket that we budgeted for. The excess kicks in at that point, and then they make a claim determination on what they want to pay out. Again, when they see these claims that are open, or however many claims that we have open, they're making a determination as to what is our potential exposure here for these claims. But all of our internal claims, our first-party claims, such as property damage in our owned buildings or owned automobiles, we have a $50,000 self-insured retention. We're on the hook for the first $50K, and that ranges anything from we get claims for up to $50,000 for damages to a roof as a result of a storm or something like that. So the trending with that is certainly going up when it comes to these auto repairs.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to point out that we do have stop loss, and we do have secondary insurance on significant claims that the town is not usually on the hook for the entire amount. But when we do have a significant claim and we pay it out through a secondary insurance, we usually see that reflected in our premium the following year. So I think Mike covered all the highlights. Deputy Mayor, if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to address them.
Thank you. And I'm still listening, but I got to, Deb, if you can take over for a minute, and I'll be on mute for a minute.
Sure. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilor Zdanowicz, since you're a committee member, you first. And any other town council members have questions? Okay, well, thanks for the explanation and we appreciate it. Mr. Manager, I think we go back to you unless.
Yes, thank you,
have
Councilor Poulin, and thanks, Mike. Appreciate your help this evening. Great job. Mr. Privatero, I'll turn it back to you for the pension portion of the HR budget.
Thank you. Just trying to get to the right page here.
7-18.
Or 716.
16, yeah.
716. Thank you. Actually, I do have. Well, let me go over just our exposure on the pension payments, because I think a lot of folks usually like to concentrate on what's it costing the town every year with respect to our annual payments. Every year, the actuaries prepare a pension valuation, and the pension valuation basically states that in order for you to be fully funded over the rest of the amortization period, which for us is 23 years, you must make this contribution. And we have a plan in place. We sold pension obligation bonds to reduce our liability annually, but then we put a policy in place that would limit the amount of contributions that the town makes on a year-over-year basis. So for next year, the actuary said that the actuarial determined employer contribution from the town would be $9,171,477. And we do have debt service on the bonds that we pay every year, and that's roughly $17.7 million. So our total pension liability next year is $26.8 million. That's going to be paid for by a combination of a contribution by the town of roughly $8 million, a contribution by the reserve fund by almost $1.2 million, and then of course then we have to pay the debt service. But I have Lisa Newton's on the line. Lisa's our financial operations manager, and Lisa prepared the actual pension document. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you if you want to go through the revenues and expenditures on the pension page, if you're still with us. Are you there? No? Okay. All right. Okay.
Just a quick question, Pete.
You're on mute, Pete.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry,
before you go on, we just have a quick question.
Yeah.
On page 716, were you saying it's a $26 million pension? I'm looking at 29.8, or am I just looking in the wrong place?
No, the $29.8 million, you're looking at the revenue side, okay? If you look at the first line, that's what the employees are contributing to the total liability, $3.7 million. So everyone has a certain amount of money taken out of their paycheck every week for that. The trust fund contribution, that's what has to come out of the trust fund, basically to satisfy all the pension payments. All right. So $29.8 million comes out of the trust fund. Then we have the reserve fund contribution. Sorry about that. That contribution basically is coming out of the pension bond reserve fund. And then we have the transfer in. The transfer in is what the town has to pay in terms of the actuarially determined contribution. So when I say the town, I'm referring to all the covered funds, because we have individuals on the town side in the general fund, we have individuals in the Board of Education, we have individuals in the parking fund and the cemetery fund. Everyone who basically is part of the pension plan gets charged back. So we have a $7.8 million liability here, but we prorate it across the board. So, you know, in the Board of Education budget, there's a line item for pension contribution to non-certified staff, because the certified staff is in the state plan. So those are all the revenues that are coming in. All right, and then we have, you know, all the expenses going out. We have the administration expenses from human resources. We have $40 million in payments. We have $1.5 million in survivor benefits, and then some pension refunds. So the total pension liability is $42.7 million. But again, it's funded from a variety of sources, from the town, from the reserve fund, from the trust fund, from the employees. So I was hoping I could explain the impact that you see, which is what is in the budget, what does the town have to contribute in the budget? Okay, and that in the town and all the covered funds, that was like the $7.9 million. So again, and if you recall that we changed the formula back in December, and now the formula basically is that we're limited to a certain percentage over what the town contributes every year. So we won't see these multi-million-dollar increase on a year-over-year basis. The mayor did ask a question last night. If the contribution, the ADEC went down, and how come our payment is going up? And it's all part of the formula that was used. And as Rick said before, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but moving forward, the town is limited to an 8% increase from the prior year contribution. So next year, if the liability goes up again, we would be limited to an 8% increase. Anything over and above that will come out of the pension fund. It's just what we're doing right now. Because if you see that on the page 716 under the proposed, you can see that the pension reserve fund is contributing $1,190,000. The town is contributing $7.9 million. Those two added up are basically $9.1 million of contributions that have to be made by either the town and the pension reserve fund. So I hope I didn't confuse everybody with that.
I thought that was very helpful. So thank you. Thank you very much for going back and doing that.
Okay.
And I'll send it in writing as well. Send an email response to that question as well, Councilor Poland.
So
Thank you.
If there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But as Rick said last night in his presentation, our funded ratio did increase from 93.1 to 93.5%. You know, basically, you know, a 0.4% increase. Any increase over the funded ratio is excellent. So we're doing okay right now.
So Peter, it's Lisa. I figured out how to unmute. So
Lisa,
if anybody has any other questions, I can try to help you out.
Did I explain that properly, Lisa?
I think you did a really good job. But if anybody has any other questions, I'm right here now.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, we can just go to the page 7-20, which is the pension bond reserve fund.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's all right. I know technology doesn't always work. You can see that when we first sold the pension bonds, we created this trust fund, this reserve fund. And the purpose of this reserve fund was to mitigate the year-over increase to the town contribution. What we do is we invest this money as well. Right now we invest it in the state treasurer's fund, and we're getting about 5.4% on this money as well. But we do have to take money out of it. You can see under last year, under the adopted 23-24, we had to pull $2.1 million out of the fund, and next year we're proposing to pull $1.2 million out of the fund. But we did pretty well in our investment earnings as well to compensate for a good piece of that. So all in all, the pension bond reserve fund is in good order, and it's doing what it was supposed to do. It's basically mitigating the increases that the town has to pay into the fund. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Deb, for filling in for me for a couple minutes. Are there any extra questions on this? And I suspect as we go along, individuals might be contacting you directly, because then obviously it gets pretty complicated.
I'd be happy to try to explain it. Sometimes we forget and we just talk in a different language, but I'd be happy to explain it.
And we went through it pretty well when we did the modification at that point. It took a couple tries, but I think we got it eventually. But anybody have any questions for tonight? I don't see any hands. Great. All right, Rick,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are down to our last discussion this evening, and it's our under non-departmental. It's our health district budget, and this one is a one-time essential payment that we make to the health district. Bloomfield makes one as well. To a combination of the two numbers allows West Hartford Bloomfield Health District to operate on an annual basis. And Peter, you just want to walk us through that number, which I can't put my fingers on right now?
Sure, I'm just going there right now. The health district payment increased from $896,325 to $967,974, roughly an 8% increase. One of the main drivers of that increase, one of the contributions that we made was to add a medical, they refer to it as a medical reliance position, a position that will be working exclusively for the district, but assisting the fire department with any issues that come up in an underserved population, addressing emergency preparedness and public health services. This is a position that was working there for half time. Now it's being funded at full time, and I believe the cost for that increase, that position was $54,000. And again, it's basically working closely with emergency preparedness in the fire department, dealing with homebound and underserved population. Otherwise, the budget from the health district going from year to year is relatively flat.
Thank you. I do see the line item on 16.1. Is there another place where we see their budgets, or is that?
I can send you their actual budget. We do not usually bind that in our book because it is a contribution to an outside district, but I can send you their budget. Their budget is approved by the district, and the town manager sits on that board between West Hartford and Bloomfield. But I can certainly make that available to you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and to you, Mr. Chairman. So I do serve on the West Hartford Bloomfield Health District. We did, in fact, vote on their budget last Wednesday. So I have a copy of it as well. I can send it out to the town council. And they held a public hearing, I want to say, a week before that, before the vote on the budget. But outside of that position, it was a year-over-year increase of about 2%, if I remember correctly. But I'll get that budget to you. But it's not something we generally include within the town budget document itself.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions on that? Yes, Ms. Pullen.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if this is something that we could at least partially fund with some of the opioid settlement funds?
That's a great, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, why don't we, let us take a look at that, Councilor Pullen. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. So yeah, we will look into that and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we have those coming in for many, many years into the future, so
We do,
I wouldn't normally suggest something that was like a one-time or only two-year project.
Oh, no, I
Thanks.
like that. Yeah. So that concludes, I know it took a little while this evening, but we got through a lot. I will, as I said, I will send off an email with a more detailed response to the pension question, as well as the ECS question that was posed last night as well, and the motor vehicle mill rate difference as well. And then we next have up on the 19th, we have Human and Community Services, where we will review the library and Leisure and Social Services budget at 6 o'clock that evening. And then the following morning, we have Community Planning and Economic Development at 8 a.m. And then that evening, we have a joint Finance and Administration Committee meeting between the Council and the Board of Education. So a lot more to come over the next few days. So hang in there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting. So thanks all and see you soon.
Thanks,
Thanks so
everyone.
much,
Have a great night.
everybody.
Take care.
Everybody.